Nara was a small village, quiet and peaceful, hidden in the hills of the ZaraKingdom. The people there lived simple lives, farming, fetching water, and sitting together in the evenings to gist. Everybody knew everybody in Nara, and news traveled fast. If something happened to one person, by the next morning, the whole village would hear about it. But lately, fear had settled over the village. For some months now, young women were being found dead, one after the other. Nobody knew what was killing them, but one thing was always the same: the strange marks on their necks. They looked like snake bites, but nobody could say for sure. No one had ever seen a snake around the women when they died. It was as if the deaths were happening in secret, and that made it even more frightening. The village chief, Chief Kale, sent hunters into the bush to find the snake, but they came back empty-handed. The deaths didn't stop, and the fear only grew stronger. Mothers started warning their daughters not to move around at night, even in the daytime. Women no longer felt safe. The once lively village became quiet, and people didn't trust as easily as before. But there was one person who didn't seem to care about all the fear. His name was Toren. If you asked any woman in Nara who the finest man in the village was, the answer was always Toren. Tall, with a muscular body that showed all the hard work he did as a builder. His skin was smooth and dark, and his eyes shone like he always knew something you didn't. His smile alone was enough to make a woman weak. Toren had the kind of charm that made women forget their fears. When he walked through the village, the women would giggle and blush, hoping he would look their way. And when he did, it felt like the sun was shining only on them. Toren knew how to use his looks and sweet words. It wasn't just his fine face. It was the way he spoke, the way he moved, and the way he always seemed to be in control. He could make a woman feel like the only person in the world. But behind all that charm and beauty, Toren had a dangerous secret he didn't care about. The fear in the village? He didn't worry about the deaths either. He went about his day as if all was well and good. Toren knew he was handsome, and he didn't hide it. He walked around the village with confidence, his head held high, and his eyes always searching for his next catch. The women of Nara were drawn to him like ants to sugar, whether at the village well, the market, or on the farm. As long as Toren was nearby, the women couldn't take their eyes off him. But it wasn't just about his looks. Toren had a way of talking that made any woman feel special. He knew the right things to say at the right time. His voice was deep and smooth, like the calm before a storm, and he always knew how to make a woman smile, even when she was feeling down. He didn't need to rush. Toren took his time, slowly drawing them in, making them trust him, making them want him. If he wanted a woman, he would get her. All it took was one charming smile, a few sweet words, and before long, she was his. And once he had her, he would take her to his hut at the edge of the village, away from prying eyes. There, under the soft glow of the moon, Toren would work his magic. He was gentle, patient, making each woman feel like she was the most important person in the world. But when the night grew darker, Toren would always ask the same strange question. Do you know the difference between a man's manhood and a snake? The women never knew what to say. They would laugh, thinking it was a joke. But before they could answer, Toren would whistle a soft, eerie sound that seemed to float in the air. The women would feel uneasy, like something was about to shift in the room, and before they could react, they would feel a cold, smooth touch on their skin. A snake, dark and dangerous, would slither out from Toren's trousers. The women always froze, their fear too strong to scream or run. The snake would wrap itself around them slowly, as if toying with its prey. Then, with a quick strike, it would bite them on the neck. The bite was always the same, two sharp marks like fangs sinking deep into their skin. The venom would spread quickly. The women would gasp, their bodies shaking as the poison took hold. Within minutes, it was over. They were dead, and Toren was left standing over their lifeless bodies, his face expressionless. By morning, the woman's body would be found in the village square, cold and pale, with the strange bite marks on her neck. The villagers would gather around, shaking their heads, wondering what kind of snake could do such a thing. But no one ever suspected Toren. He was too handsome, too charming, too perfect. Each time another woman died, the fear in the village grew. But Toren didn't care. He continued his life as if nothing was happening. The women still blushed and giggled when he walked by, completely unaware of the danger that lurked beneath his good looks and sweet words. Life in Nara went on, even with the fear hanging over the village. The women were more cautious, especially at night. But the daily routine of fetching water, farming, and trading continued. Every time a woman died, people would mourn, but nobody had any answers. The village chief tried to keep the people calm, but deep down, everyone knew that something was wrong, and it wasn't just a normal snake causing these deaths. Then one day, a new face appeared in the village, a woman named Liora. She was different from the other women in Nara, tall and graceful, with skin that shone like polished wood. Liora carried herself with confidence. Her beauty wasn't just in her face or body, but in the way she moved, as if she wasn't bothered by anything around her. She had come to visit her aunt, who lived on the edge of the village, and almost immediately, she caught Toren's attention. Toren noticed Liora the first time he saw her at the well. Unlike the other women, who couldn't help but stare at him or blush when he passed by, Liora didn't seem impressed. She didn't giggle, she didn't stare, and she didn't even smile at him. Instead, she looked straight past him, her face calm, like she was in control of everything. This intrigued Toren. He wasn't used to being ignored, and Liora's calmness felt like a challenge to him. He had always been able to win over any woman he wanted, and he wasn't about to let Liora be the first one to resist him. From that moment, Toren decided that he had to have her. Toren began to watch Liora more. When Toren observed her closely, he noticed that she was always polite but never too friendly. She spoke kindly to people, but she never allowed anyone to get too close to her. This only made Toren want her more. He wasn't just interested in her beauty. He was fascinated by her mystery, by her strength. The more he watched her, the more determined he became. Toren wasn't used to failing, and he wasn't about to start now. He began to follow Liora, looking for opportunities to speak with her, to charm her like he had done with so many others. But each time he approached her, Liora kept her distance as if she knew something that he didn't. One afternoon, Toren found his chance. Liora was at the well, filling her water pot, and there were fewer people around. Toren walked up to her, his usual confident smile on his face. "Liora," he said smoothly, his voice deep and sweet, "like honey, let me help you carry that." Liora glanced at him, her face expressionless. She didn't look impressed by his looks or his charm, and this only made Toren more eager. He waited for her to giggle or blush like the others, but instead, she simply nodded. "If you insist," she said calmly, stepping back to let him take the pot. Toren felt a small victory. He lifted the pot easily and placed it on his head, making sure to show off his strength as they walked to her aunt's house. Toren tried to make small talk, but Liora remained quiet. She answered his questions politely but didn't give him any more than necessary. This wasn't what Toren was used to, but he told himself it was only a matter of time before she fell for him. All the women eventually did. She is only playing hard to get. He just had to work a little harder with this. One after that day at the well, Toren couldn't get Liora out of his mind. She wasn't like the other women of Nara. Most of them would have melted under his smile, giggling and blushing, but not Liora. She was different. The more distant she remained, the more obsessed Toren became. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to a woman not giving him the attention he was used to. It was new, it was frustrating, and it made him want her even more. Toren had always been able to get any woman he wanted with little effort. Just a flash of his smile, a few smooth words, and the women of Nara were his. They were all the same, soft, eager, and easy to seduce. But Liora, she wasn't falling for any of his tricks. She seemed immune to his charm, and this drove Toren crazy. Day after day, he watched her, when she fetched water, when she walked through the market, even when she visited the farm with her aunt. Liora carried herself with a quiet strength that made her stand out. She didn't seem to care about anyone's opinion, least of all Toren. She lived her life peacefully, and that only made her more attractive to him. Toren started finding excuses to talk to her. At first, it was little things, offering to help carry her load, trying to make small talk, trying to get her attention in any way he could. But no matter what he did, Liora stayed polite but distant. Her calmness was beginning to bother him. One evening, Toren couldn't take it anymore. He decided that he needed to do more. He needed to take control of the situation. He couldn't let Liora continue to slip through his fingers. He had never failed with a woman before, and he wasn't about to start now. Toren knew that Liora often visited her aunt's small farm just outside the village, where they grew yams and vegetables. So he decided to wait for her there. It was a warm evening, and the sun was beginning to set, casting a soft orange glow over the fields. He leaned against a tree, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes focused on the path leading to the farm. Finally, he saw her. Liora was walking slowly, her steps steady and graceful. She was carrying a basket of yams on her head, her back straight, her face calm as usual. As she approached, Toren stepped forward, blocking her path. "Liora," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "You've been avoiding me." Liora raised an eyebrow and looked up at him, not breaking her calm expression. "I've been doing no such thing, Toren. I've just been busy." Her response irritated him. Toren wasn't used to being brushed off like this. He was used to women being excited to see him, not acting like he didn't matter. But he forced a smile, trying to keep his cool. "You're always so serious," he said, taking a step closer. "Why don't you let me walk with you? We could get to know each other better." Liora gave him a long look, her face still unreadable. For a moment, Toren thought she might actually agree. But then she shook her head, stepping around him. "I'm not interested, Toren," she said simply. Toren stood there, stunned. He wasn't sure if he was more shocked or angry. How could she just walk away from him like that? Nobody had ever said no to him like this. His pride felt bruised, but more than that, his obsession with Liora grew even stronger. He couldn't let her slip away so easily. No, she would be his no matter what it took. As Liora walked away, Toren's eyes darkened. He made a promise to himself right there. He would have her, and she wouldn't be able to resist him for long. Toren's frustration grew as Liora continued to resist him. He was used to women falling for him quickly, but Liora wasn't like the others. The more she ignored his advances, the more obsessed he became. He knew he had to change his approach to win her over. This time, he decided to be patient, to play the long game. Instead of showering her with attention like before, Toren pulled back. He stopped following her around and barely spoke to her when they crossed paths. It didn't take long for Liora to notice the change. She had expected him to keep trying, but now he seemed distant, almost uninterested. The shift in Toren's behavior worked. After days of watching him from a distance, Liora became curious. She approached him one evening as he sat outside his hut, sharpening his tools. "You've been quiet lately?" she remarked, her tone calm but curious. Toren simply nodded, keeping his answers short and his face expressionless. He knew this would draw her in. After a few moments of silence, Toren suggested a walk, and Liora agreed, her guard lowering slightly. As they walked, Toren kept the conversation light, just enough to keep her comfortable. He wanted her to believe that he was a changed man and that he was more than the charming, attention-seeking womanizer she had assumed. Slowly, it seemed to work. Toren had played his cards right, and now Liora's defenses were lowering. She no longer looked at him with suspicion, and her once guarded responses softened. Toren could sense that the moment he had been waiting for was near. His patience had paid off. One evening, as the sun was setting over the village, Toren decided it was time to act. He invited Liora to his hut, saying they could share a quiet evening together. Liora, now more comfortable around him, agreed. The air was still, and the village seemed almost too quiet as they made their way to his hut on the outskirts of Nara. Inside, the flickering light from a small oil lamp cast soft shadows on the walls. Toren offered her a seat and poured her some palm wine, his voice calm and soothing as they talked. Liora sipped the wine slowly, her eyes watching him carefully, but no longer with the sharpness of before. Toren smiled inwardly, knowing that the moment was finally his. He moved closer, gently brushing his fingers against her hand, and began to speak in that low, seductive voice he was known for. "Liora," he said softly, "I've been thinking about you. You're different from the others, strong, independent." Liora smiled faintly, still relaxed, but Toren could see the effect his words were having. He leaned in a little closer, his voice now almost a whisper. "Do you know the difference between a man's manhood and a snake?" Liora's brows furrowed slightly, confused by the sudden question. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, Toren began to whistle. The sound was soft at first, barely noticeable, but it grew louder, filling the room with an eerie tune. Liora shifted in her seat, suddenly uneasy, but it was too late. From the shadows, a dark shape began to stir. Liora's eyes widened as she saw it. A snake, long and menacing, slithering out from Toren's trousers. The cold, smooth scales glistened in the dim light as the creature coiled around her. Toren watched, his face expressionless, as the snake prepared to deliver its deadly bite. But something was different this time. Liora, though terrified, suddenly reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out a small white flute. Without a moment's hesitation, she blew into it, and the sound that came out was sharp, piercing, and filled the air with a strange energy. Toren's eyes widened in shock as the snake froze mid-strike. It hesitated, confused, its eyes now locked on Liora instead of its usual prey. She blew the flute again, and this time, the snake slowly turned away from her and slithered back toward Toren. Toren stumbled backward, fear flashing across his face. For the first time, the snake, now under Liora's control, coiled around him, tightening its grip. Toren gasped, struggling for breath as the serpent constricted, its fangs hovering near his neck. How did you?" Toren stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Liora's face was calm, her eyes cold and steady. "You're not the only one who knows how to control a snake. It's time you paid for your wicked acts. Also, remember to say hi to Saria." Before Toren could respond, the snake struck, sinking its fangs into his neck. The venom spread quickly, paralyzing him almost instantly. His body convulsed, his breathing shallow as the life drained out of him. Liora stood over him, her expression unreadable, as Toren's body went still. The snake loosened its grip and slithered away into the darkness, leaving Toren lifeless on the floor. Long before Liora ever set foot in Nara, her heart was heavy with grief and anger. The reason she had come to the village wasn't just to visit her aunt. It was to find answers. A few months earlier, she had lost her closest friend, Saria, in one of the mysterious deaths that had shaken the nearby villages. The pain of losing Saria had cut deep, and Liora had made a vow to herself that she would find the person responsible. Saria and Liora had grown up together, inseparable since childhood. Saria was full of life, always laughing, always bright. They had shared everything, from their dreams to their deepest secrets. One evening, Saria had told Liora she was seeing someone new, a man she described as tall, handsome, and charming, someone who made her feel like the only woman in the world. But Saria never mentioned his name. She only said that this new man had something mysterious about him, something she couldn't quite explain. 2 weeks later, Saria was found dead. Her body lay in the village square, cold, gold, and pale, with strange bite marks on her neck, just like the others. They mourned her loss, but no one had answers. Liora was devastated, and her grief quickly turned to suspicion. Who was this man Saria had been seeing? Why hadn't she revealed his name? And why did no one know anything about him? Liora couldn't let it go. She knew that her friend's death wasn't some random accident. It had to be connected to this mysterious man. Her instincts told her that something dark was at play, so she began asking questions quietly, carefully. She wanted to know everything there was to know about the recent deaths, and soon enough, her search led her to Nara. When Leora arrived in Nara and laid eyes on Toren for the first time, she immediately suspected him. His looks, his charm, and the way he commanded attention, all of it fit the description Saria had given. Toren was the kind of man who could seduce any woman, and Leora's instincts told her that he was hiding something. But Leora knew she couldn't confront him directly. Toren was too careful, too clever. If she wanted to get to the bottom of the mystery, she had to be patient. She had to play his game, make him think she was just another woman drawn to his charm. And so, she allowed him to approach her, to believe he was slowly winning her over. But all the while, Leora was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Before coming to Nara, Leora had sought the help of a powerful oracle in her home village. The deaths were too strange, too similar to be the work of an ordinary snake. The oracle was known for seeing beyond the physical world, for uncovering hidden truths, and Leora hoped she would have answers. The oracle had welcomed Leora into her small hut, filled with the smell of burning herbs and thick with the energy of the unseen. Leora explained everything. Saria's mysterious death, the bite marks, the strange man her friend had mentioned. The oracle listened in silence, her eyes closed as if she were seeing things far beyond the walls of her hut. Finally, the oracle opened her eyes and spoke. "There is a man," she said in a low, raspy voice, "whose manhood is not like that of ordinary men. He carries a snake within him, a serpent of seduction and death. It is his weapon, his curse. With it, he lures women to his bed, and once they are under his spell, the snake strikes. The venom kills swiftly, leaving only the marks behind." Leora felt a chill run through her. She had suspected something dark, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. A snake man, able to charm women into their own deaths. It sounded impossible, but the deaths in Nara were too real, too frequent to ignore. "Is there any way to stop him?" Leora asked, her voice steady despite the fear growing inside her. The oracle nodded slowly. "There is a way, but it is dangerous. You must use his weapon against him. The snake responds to a specific sound, a whistle that he uses to summon it. But with the right tool, you can control the snake. I will give you a flute, a sacred instrument that can protect you if you play it at the right moment. The snake will obey you, not him." The oracle handed Leora a small silver flute, no bigger than her hand. It looked simple, but Leora could feel the power within it. This was her only chance. "But be warned," the oracle continued. "He is clever. He will try to seduce you to make you trust him. You must let him believe that he has won. Only then can you strike with the flute." In hand and with a plan forming in her mind, Leora set off for Nara, ready to face the man she believed was behind her friend's death. From the moment she saw Toren, she knew she was right. He fit the description perfectly. The charm, the arrogance, the way he seemed to draw women in like flies to honey. She had to be careful. She couldn't let him see her true intentions, so she played along, allowing him to think he was getting closer, that she was falling for him, just like the others had. Little did Toren know that Leora was different. She wasn't just another victim. She was here for revenge, for justice. And with the oracle's flute, she had the power to make sure that Toren paid for what he had done to Saria and to all the other women who had fallen under his deadly spell. By morning, the village of Nara was buzzing with whispers. The villagers gathered in the square, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. Toren, the man they had all admired, lay lifeless in the middle of the square, his body pale and still. Beside him, the snake, his deadly secret, coiled its head, severed and lifeless. Leora stood before the villagers, her face calm, but her heart heavy. She had done what she came to do. She had avenged her friend, Saria, and brought an end to the terror that had haunted the women of Nara for so long. The village was silent as she spoke, her voice steady and clear. "I am not just an ordinary visitor," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I came here with a mission, to find the man responsible for my friend and Saria's death, and to put an end to the killings. Toren, with all his charm and good looks, was not what he seemed. He was the cause of all the deaths in this village. He used his snake manhood, hidden inside him, to seduce and kill women. The villagers were stunned. They had never suspected Toren, the handsome, charming builder who seemed perfect in every way, of being the source of so much pain and misery. For years, he had lived among them, gaining their trust, all while hiding the dark truth behind his smile. They had been blinded by his charm, by his fine looks, never imagining that he was a monster in disguise. Murmurs of disbelief spread through the crowd. Some of the women who had once giggled and blushed in his presence now stood in silence, their faces pale with shock. Others bowed their heads in shame, realizing how close they had come to falling victim to his deadly seduction. But now the truth was clear. Toren's reign of terror had come to an end, and the village was free from the darkness that had plagued it for so long. Years passed, and the story of Toren and his snake manhood became a legend in Nara. Mothers would tell the tale to their daughters, warning them of the dangers of falling for a man's charm without knowing his heart. The tale of Toren became a lesson for all, a reminder that not everything beautiful is good, and that sometimes danger hides behind the sweetest smile. Liora's name became one of honor throughout the ZaraKingdom. She was spoken of with reverence, her bravery and wisdom celebrated by the people she had faced down. A monster outsmarted, she saved countless women from suffering the same fate as her dear friend, Saria. Her name was whispered with pride by the women of Nara, and her story was passed down from generation to generation. As for Toren, his name was forgotten, buried in the dust of history. No one spoke of him anymore, except as a warning to those who might be tempted to use charm and deceit for evil. The villagers would remember the darkness he brought, but they would never honor his memory. The village of Nara thrived once again. The women were safe. The fear that had gripped the village for so long finally lifted, and life returned to normal. The people of Nara found peace, but the lessons of the past were never forgotten. The memory of what had happened remained, a reminder of the strength and wisdom it took to uncover the truth and to protect those who were vulnerable. Thanks for diving into the thrilling tale of Nara and Liora's quest for justice. If you enjoyed this story of mystery, deception, and triumph, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more gripping stories from the ZaraKingdom. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Liora's courage or Toren's dark secret? Let's keep the conversation going.